He's so cute. Oh my gosh, guys. Aren't they just so cute? They're just adorable.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. I have spent many years researching and learning about basically everything that has to do with homesteading or farming, raising animals, or growing plants. I have a real passion for homesteading. And through all that research, I've come to realize that most people raise meat chickens the wrong way. If you want a long-term, sustainable, easily maintained source of chicken meat, then raising meat birds the usual way is going to be a waste of time. Today I'm going to share with you the right way to provide yourself with a never-ending supply of sustainable meat chickens for the rest of your life. First, let me briefly cover what the traditional way of raising meat chickens is so that we're all on the same page. How I see most people growing their own chicken meat is you order a whole bunch of specific meat breed chickens, most of the time that's Cornish cross, from a hatchery. You get them delivered in the mail, you raise them for 2 months and feed them a whole bunch of grain, and then butcher them. Now, I can understand if you're like a first-time homesteader and you want to kind of get your feet wet before jumping in wholeheartedly. I could see how then you might want to try this, just for a trial run of 2 months of raising some meat yourself. But most of the time, I'm seeing long-term homesteaders who are using this method as their only way of getting chicken meat. And I'm actually really puzzled by this. After all, one of the main reasons for having a homestead is to be sustainable and be able to provide your own food for yourself and your family, so why would you be twice a year in the spring and the fall buying a whole bunch of birds when you could have a sustainable source of meat chickens that you can breed, hatch, raise, and butcher yourself? To put this into further perspective, let's compare the way of raising meat chickens to the way of raising some other types of meat animals. Make sure to note again that this is not a first-timer experimenting with if they like raising meat animals. This is a serious homesteader using this method for their main source of meat. Imagine every spring and fall you buy a whole bunch of rabbit kits, raise them for a few weeks, and then butcher them. Then when you want another batch of rabbits, you buy some more, raise them for a couple weeks, feeding them lots of pellets, and then butchering them. Or perhaps every year you buy feeder pigs, raise them for a couple months, and butcher them then. Or perhaps you buy some lambs or goat kids, raise them for a while, and butcher them. Now, y'all know that's not how it works. People aren't buying feeder animals. They're buying breeders. They're buying breeder pigs and breeding goats and breeding rabbits. But no one seems to be buying breeder chickens. I'm hoping there are some people out there who are doing the same thing I'm doing and just don't have a platform to share about it with, because I'm really surprised. Everyone around me, they're buying breeder pigs, they're buying breeding cows, and yet they're still raising meat chickens the traditional way of buying them from a hatchery twice a year. Well, in an effort to hopefully change some minds and help some homesteads become more sustainable, let me share with you what I consider the proper and correct way to raise meat chickens. First of all, you have to kind of get out of the headspace of mass production. Like most things with homesteading, you can't have all the good things in one thing. You have to trade off some pros and some cons. So for getting the pros of sustainability, you do have to live with the con of less production. The first thing to tackle is the breed you are buying. Let's pretend you're starting with no chickens. So you're just going to start from scratch. If you already have some chickens and stuff, you might be able to tweak your system you already have. But let's just pretend someone is starting from scratch. Instead of buying a meat breed like the Cornish cross or the Red Ranger or I know there's a whole bunch of different offshoots of different breeds, but instead of getting a meat breed, you need to get a dual purpose breed. That means they are good egg layers and they also have a big frame, which would mean more meat. They're not going to be as big as meat chickens. They're going to grow slower than meat chickens because they're bred for eggs and meat instead of just for meat. But in the long run, it's going to be well worth it. My personal favorite breed is the Australorp. That's what we have. We have fallen in love with this breed, so I obviously would suggest getting Australorp chickens. Once you've decided on your chicken breed, you have to make sure you have both roosters and hens. Because you're going to be hatching your own eggs, you need at least one rooster, ideally more like a couple of roosters, to fertilize your eggs. So if you're ordering from a hatchery, maybe get a straight run, which is a mix of both boys and girls, versus getting only girls. I've also found Craigslist to be a great place to find chickens. You can buy a whole flock of chickens on Craigslist. You can buy chicks that someone's hatching on Craigslist. You can buy roosters. So if you already have a whole bunch of hens, you can just buy a rooster. You can go to farm swaps or other stuff like that, but just somehow get your hands on hens and a rooster or roosters. Once you have your breeding stock, and obviously once they're old enough to be breeding and laying eggs, you're going to hatch your own eggs. You will either need a whole bunch of broody hens or an incubator. Honestly, if you're just starting out with this method and you have the means for it, it's good to start out with an incubator because managing a whole bunch of broody hens is a lot of work. And I think it's better to kind of like dip your toes in to something new, get comfortable with that, then take the further step instead of jumping in all at once. It's a lot less stressful that way. Once your chicks have hatched, you're going to raise them until they're big enough to butcher. This is one of my favorite parts about raising sustainably, other than the sustainability part, is the fact that you are raising dual-purpose chickens that you don't need to shovel a whole bunch of grain into. Instead, you can get creative and natural and healthy with your feed options. You can feed food scraps, you can give them compost to dig in and find their own food, you can free-range them, you can soak their grain, you can grow mealworms for them, you can give them a much better diet because you're not trying to make them grow as fast as possible, and possibly even feed them for free if you have a big enough compost pile or enough food scraps if you're getting from a restaurant or something. It will take longer for them to reach butcher size, and when they are as big as they're going to get, they're not going to be as big as the meat chickens, but I think it's around 4 or 5 months old is when you want to butcher. It's like you want to hit that peak point when they're like full grown or nearly full grown, but they haven't become tough, so you can still use them in recipes other than like in a crock pot, like you have to do with like an old stew hen. Then you butcher them and enjoy eating them. And then another thing I love about this system is that you don't have to butcher all of them. If your flock is getting a little old, you can keep back a few hens and butcher your old hens and then add in the new ones. If like your rooster dies, you have another rooster to just like plop in there. There are so many different little added benefits to raising chickens this more sustainable way. If you couldn't already tell, I'm very passionate about this subject. I'm really glad I was lucky enough to stumble upon this better way of raising meat chickens. I'm so excited to be doing it on a larger scale this year. In the past, we've used the system with just like a couple of chickens, but this is the first year we're actually doing a whole bunch of them to intentionally provide us with a lot of meat. Hopefully, I stated my case well, and I've been able to convince some of you guys to try this better way. Also, make sure to look out for more meat chicken content. I'm planning on making many more interesting videos about our meat chickens and our more natural, sustainable way of raising them. Also, feel free to check out the previous videos we've made about raising chickens naturally and sustainably as well. Thanks for watching!